It's Monday, February 11th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On Barnstable Today, we learn more about a series of transportation listening sessions and do a deep dive on the Vineyard Wind Project. First up, municipal news and notes. The 2019 spring program for Barnstable Recreation is now available online. You may register online or in person at 8:45 a.m. on February 26th. Download the brochure at www.townofbarnstable.us. Under recreation. Old obsolete bridges, a congested traffic circle, marked bike lanes, and dealing with summer traffic. Regional transportation needs a long-term vision. Cape Cod Chamber President and CEO Wendy Northcross joins us on the phone.
3, 2.
On the phone with me today, President and CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber, Wendy Northcross. You can't get there from here.
No, you cannot get there from here.
We're talking transportation today, and there's lots of public meetings happening in the next few weeks and an online survey. Tell us what's going on.
I know there's a lot of movement right now on an issue that impacts every single Cape Codder, and it's something that the Chamber has been closely working on for several years. So we're really excited to see these meetings, a series of meetings and activity that's stepping up the pace, and it's all related to the Cape Cod Canal bridges, as well as some other transportation issues.
So there's a collaboration out there. So it's not just the Cape Cod Commission, but there's other transportation, either providers or organizations that are collaborating together. Here in Hyannis, in the town of Barnstable, we know that the east end of Hyannis and areas around the transportation center are hot points for things. So what are these meetings really going to be doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's on several different levels. If you start at the local level, that hub around the transportation center in the East End, that's always been a prime piece of real estate, always targeted to be kind of a hub, if you will, for rail, for bike, pedestrian access, for buses. So it's just a natural connection point. It's a great asset for the town of Barnstable, a great asset to Main Street, and it's, just a tish away from the airport. So it's really our central hub for Cape Cod and transportation, and all that activity is really, really important and should key into the next steps, which include really looking at, the Cape Cod Commission has just issued a survey. They're updating the regional transportation plan, and we're going to be attending a meeting that they're having a series of 3 meetings across the Cape this week. We're attending a meeting today to talk about bike lanes. You're used to hearing about bridges from me or maybe ferries, but it's like bike lanes are becoming really in demand. And everywhere I go, people say, not off-road bike paths per se, but a bike lane that's marked and indicated, and people know that's where the bicycles can go and the cars need to beware. So, we're hoping to embed the bike lane issue into the regional transportation plan. And then finally, there is a series of meetings that are going on with the collaborative effort with Mass DOT, Department of Transportation from the state, and the Army Corps of Engineers from the federal government. The Army Corps owns and takes care of our beautiful canal bridges, and Mass DOT is responsible for all the roads leading to and from the bridges, and they're working on a joint study to determine how to improve that whole canal area transportation network. What roadway improvements do we need? Are the bridges something that we rehab or we build new? And of course, we come down on the side of the bridges are functionally obsolete. They need to be new. How are we going to do that? And this study will answer that.
Right, and there always seems to be some concern as well, as if you get new bridges, what happens to the antiquated highways around the bridges? So, having Mass DOT actually work in conjunction in the study is important.
It is important, and the irony of all of this is that the highways are actually not bad. The highways capacity is okay. Sure, we're going to have traffic jams in the height of the season. The only way to fix that is to drastically overbuild, and nobody wants to do that, and it's too expensive. But the bridges are tiny, they're narrow. No one goes side by side in those dual lanes over the bridges. You're afraid of that 18-inch curb that's going to scratch your car, and the big trucks can't fit in the smaller subsized lanes. So, that plus all of the maintenance work that's required now into the future just means more and more lane drops. So it's not even keeping up with the capacity of the roadways. So the roadways can be improved. There's some things we can do, Belmont Circle, Bourne Rotary. There's some very interesting designs on the drawing board now, but people need to become aware of it, understand, what the impacts could be, what's the timing of it. We keep saying we can't wait forever for this stuff.
Right. And I guess there's a survey out there, too, that the Cape Cod Commission has on their website?
Yes, they just released it yesterday. It's great. So people, I started to crack it open yesterday and ran out of time, had to dash off to a meeting, but they're asking people to weigh in. I think we have until March 1st to participate in the survey and give your opinions on, anything from regional transit authority. Do we have enough ride-to-work service on Cape Cod? Hearing from the hospital, the answer is no. Do we have enough, after-hours bus service for people in the hospitality industry that work the late shift, especially on the Outer Cape? I'm hearing the answer is no. So this is our chance. And the common person's chance to weigh in. Go to that survey. I'm sure you'll share the link with your viewers, Paula. But go to the survey and share your thoughts.
That's fantastic. Thanks for the update, Wendy.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Public meetings for Vineyard Wind's draft environmental impact statement have been rescheduled for this Wednesday, February 13th at the Doubletree Hotel on Route 28 in Hyannis. An open house is at 5 p.m. and a presentation with questions and answer session at 6 p.m. Assistant Town Attorney Charles McLaughlin joined us in studio to talk about the benefits to the town and where we are in the project timeline. With me today, Assistant Town Attorney Charles McLaughlin. We're going to talk Vineyard Wind and host agreement. What is a host agreement? Charlie's going to tell us.
Host agreement is a contract between an entity and the town to define, in this case, obviously on Vineyard Wind's behalf, what our relationship is with respect to the cable coming ashore and to the substation, who's doing what, when they're doing it, how we're checking to make sure that the environment is protected, and covering a whole series of other considerations that try and spell things out in reasonable but not complete detail, and leaving some of the details to be worked out among the professionals from the engineering side. But it's our best attempt to define who's doing what over the next 25 years.
All right. 25 years, this is a long project. It's not like it's going to, start next week and end a year from now.
Correct.
There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts in this. Vineyard Wind has been granted a lot of their special permitting from the federal government, so a lot of their, pieces of the puzzle are in place. Why is it important for the town to actually enter some of these pieces in the front end of this host agreement? For example, where's the cable going to come ashore? What happens when the cable comes ashore? Give us a little breakdown on how you approach these negotiations and what the town really needed.
Sure. I brought a copy of it with me. It's 23 or 4 pages. As you indicated, an awful lot of moving parts on it, but really the starting point on this, in some respects, is where it's going to connect to the grid. And they had a number of options that were required. This is under the purview of the State Department of Public Utilities and its subsidiary board, the Energy Facility Siting Board, which governs all of these types of projects throughout the state. And it's important to have a place to connect this, obviously, to the regional grid so the electricity can go in and service the entire needs throughout the system. It's not dedicated just to the Cape, but it goes into the grid as an extra tranche of energy to supplement what we're already doing in other methods. So Critical to that process is where it comes ashore from the town's perspective, and the DPU required that there be alternatives proposed and analyzed thoroughly in order to determine where it could be done with the most advantage and the least cost and the least harm to the environment. And that process is something we're familiar with, having gone through the Cape Wind case. And we had a lot of concerns there. We had and have a lot of concerns here. And from lessons learned there, with I think a very reasonably cooperative approach from Vineyard Wind, given that we're on opposite sides of an important discussion in some respects. But we were able to start a active dialogue with them a couple of years ago, led by the town manager, and going from there and spelling out some critical must-haves from the very beginning to protect the environment. We had learned, for example, and probably first and foremost in our concerns and in the manager's concern, was the issue of water protection. The Cape Wind case, all of these cables, because they carry such high volume of electricity, heat up. And as they heat up, it's necessary in order to prevent faults to cool them down. And Cape Wind chose a method that had a cooling fluid throughout the length of the cable and at the substation. This cooling fluid, if it mixes with groundwater, is highly toxic. And it was critical to us that we avoid that or plan for its containment should there be any release. Vineyard Wind came to us and said, we're using a different methodology of energy distribution. So from day one, the cables are solid cables, they're not liquid cooled. And therefore, the liquid cooling that we're concerned about is to be located at the substation. There were several options for them to consider, all the way from Fall River and east to Falmouth, to Mashpee, to West Barnstable, and to Hyannis/Barnstable in Independence Park for their substation. The equipment there has thousands of gallons, the transformers particularly, thousands of gallons of this so-called dielectric cooling fluid. And if that gets away from you and it gets into the water table, it could be catastrophic, quite frankly. So that said, the energy needs of the Commonwealth and the statutes that govern the DPU's review of this give enormous power to the DPU and the Energy Facility Siting Board to, frankly, overrule any local opposition, any county opposition, and even state agencies. So it was really important for us to get to the table early, spell out our concerns, recognize the reality of that statutory construct, and also the reality of doing what we could early on to try and find a way to make this happen that benefits everybody.
It's fascinating that, there's in that short period of time that technology and methodology changes. This is a new industry, a blue economy industry. It's going to bring jobs to the region, I'm sure, as well as some other enhancements to the town. So we didn't enter this agreement for free.
No.
So there's a monetary consideration for this. The town needs revenue every year, needs at least $1 million in revenue every year to maintain services and the levels of operations here at the town. So when we talk about Vineyard Wind and a host agreement, are there monetary considerations for the town here as well?
There certainly are. Although the monetary component was not driving this, program, but because of the risk posed and because of the insults that the Hyannis water system had already suffered from the airport and from the fire training academy, and some historical insults because of the industrial nature of the park, which is directly upstream from the underground water flow, going directly towards our Mary Dunn wells and others for that matter. We thought it was really important, if we could, to find some way for taking on that risk and not opposing this project to be compensated in a fashion that would allow the mitigation monies, if you will, perhaps to be devoted in the council's discretion to a fund that would help us address our current and future water needs. And we achieved that in two ways. One was through specifically earmarked and segregated mitigation funds at the rate of, if the project went, the first component of the project went to a new substation to be built in Independence Park, and all of the approvals fell in place such that the thing was going to be constructed, we'd receive $16 million over the life of the contract. If Vineyard Wind chooses either from an expansion of the current state procurement for green energy that they won the first round on to win a second round, which is coming out this summer sometime, they would want to bring their project in to Town of Barnstable again, but because the capacity at Independence Park would then be full, they wanted to bring it up to the Oak Street substation. And if that were to occur, we'd get another $16 million over the 25-year life of that aspect of the project. Vineyard Wind has also bid on a second federal lease offshore beyond what they already successfully bid on, and that presents another opportunity to bring energy ashore where we're not sure, but all of these, if they come into Town of Barnstable, it's appropriate that we, for the cost of balancing that risk and reward for the region, and there certainly are rewards for it, to consider an appropriate payment. Beyond those two payments, like any other private project, this will produce personal property taxes and/or, depending on the nature of the structures, perhaps real estate property tax income to the town. And for the phase one aspect of the project up to Independence Park, which was Vineyard Wind's favored place to come ashore, whether it was through the town of Barnstable or through the town of Yarmouth, the estimated income to be derived from, taxable income to be derived from that first phase of the project is about $1 million a year, at least initially. It will be what it will be, depending on the assessor's view of its value as time goes along, but it will extend for the full time that that project is there as an asset. So at a minimum, 25 years presumably, and these facilities, the transformer facilities and so forth, with what we've seen in the Eversource array, last a good 40 plus years. So it's a long stream of income that again will be duplicated over in Oak Street if they go to Oak Street as well. So $1 to $2 million a year perhaps in the first couple of years of each phase, and from there on it'll just depend on what the town is taxing and what the assessed value of the property is.
Right. And then there's also some intangibles here that we'll be realizing is once that cable goes into the ground to get to these substations, those roads have to be repaved.
That's correct. Yep.
So those obviously are always on a town's mind, is those upgrades of
Yep.
roads. So those would be included in that as well.
They'll be done simultaneously. The town's work to take from a sound engineering perspective to advance the timeline for work that we know needs to be done, and to take advantage of the fact that the roadways will be opened up in order to put in the subterranean cable for Vineyard Wind. It's a good opportunity for us to upgrade infrastructure there, and we'll be doing that. And just this past week, the council started to look at that issue. Actually, they started to look at a couple of issues related here. One is the cost of some preliminary engineering to see what opportunities there are to move in parallel while that road is torn apart. The second thing the council looked at last week is to create a dedicated fund from the mitigation payments that we talked about, dedicating that monies into an expressly earmarked fund for the purpose of looking at water infrastructure and how best to improve water quality. Hopefully in that process, either lessening the use of or getting away wholly from the use of Mary Dunn wells and relocating wells upstream of as many of the sources of contaminants as we're aware of, so that for the indefinite future we'll have good pure water coming in, and which is absolutely vital to this village and to all of the infrastructure it supports, including the hospital and other key consumers. So it's a good opportunity for us to take these wells out of harm's way, and who knows what the next emerging contaminant might be, and what challenges it presents or might present. So important to get this, take advantage of this opportunity, all of which was thinking that was foremost in our minds when we first started looking at this project. So a good opportunity to move wells, find some funding sources to do so, and get clean energy into the grid in the process. So.
A win, a win, a win.
Yes, yeah, excuse
so
me.
there will be a little bit of disruption, perhaps, down at the Colville Beach area. What do you want to tell residents as we wrap up this interview? What can they expect as we move forward?
The cables will be coming in from offshore, and the way this, again, in significant detail, working with our engineering department, Vineyard Wind will work in the off-season at Colville's. They expect it to last, the work there to last perhaps 2 winter seasons. And in each instance, the actual cable path will be relatively narrow, will come in underground from offshore and pass beneath the beach portion at Colville's as much as 25 to 30 feet deep, and then quickly ascend to the parking lot area, where it will level out at about a 4 to 6 foot depth, fully enclosed cabling and so forth, and work its way around the north side of the parking lot and out onto Craigville Beach Road, and then up Craigville to whichever route finally works out. It looks as though it's going to go up to Strawberry Hill, Finney's Lane, and up that way. And they're still working out, depending on DPU approval of this final route, going up that route and coming into Independence Park off Finney's in some fashion. There are 2 or 3 variants up there, and the engineers are working through that with the DPU. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, once the cable work is done for the season, the parking lot and beach will be buttoned up. They're using what they call, I should mention, they're using what they call horizontal direct drilling, which means they'll set up a large drilling rig in the parking lot, and it'll drill down from a pit and then horizontally out for the better part of 1,000 feet out to into the area under Nantucket Sound, and then surface out there to connect to the cable in a junction box coming in from offshore. So per se, the beach itself won't be disturbed, and that will be the case. It's an enclosed cable, fully shielded and so forth, and come in that fashion. So you won't actually see an interruption with the surface use of the beach. The parking lot will be torn up for the winter, will be temporarily restored for next year from now, 2020 presumably. And again, that fall, the remainder of the work will be accomplished. At the end of that work, Vineyard Wind will give us a new parking lot and contribute up to $80,000 for the cost of a brand new bathhouse over there. So at the end, there will be tangible benefits there. We got a brand new parking lot. The one over there is falling apart, quite frankly. So a lot of work to be done there. Some temporary inconvenience while that section is fenced off during actual construction work, and then buttoned up for the summer and re-engage afterwards.
Wow, just so many moving parts with this, but thank you so much, Charlie, for coming in and kind of giving us a little bit of a deep dive on this. I know that, even myself trying to wrap my head around exactly what this project is. The website for Vineyard Wind is extremely informative.
Yeah.
They have video there. They have all sorts of different things that residents can sink their teeth into. And if they choose to, they can read the how many pages?
22 or 3 pages.
23-page
yeah.
host agreement. But definitely we'll probably talk again as
Yep.
the project starts to break down. But thanks again
Yep.
for kind of getting us in this process of
Happy to help.
it's happening.
Yeah, we're happy to help, happy to play a small part in it. We are available if people have questions. Probably I'm the fellow to make the initial call to on many of these issues, and I can send them in the right direction and explain anything on the host community agreement. So,
Excellent.
Paula, thank you so much. Great to
Thank
see
you.
you. Happy
You too.
New Year.
You
Good
too.
to see you. Thank you.
Here's a look at things to do, places to go, and people to meet. A Community Resiliency by Design workshop hosted by the Barnstable Planning Board is tonight, Monday, February 11th, starting at 5:30 p.m. At the second CRBD workshop, results of the visual preference survey and previous stakeholder feedback will be shared, and model residential designs for the Hyannis study area developed by contractor Union Studios will be presented. For more information, www.capecodcommission.org/CRBD or call Arden, Housing Coordinator, 508-862-4683. Now for a look at upcoming meetings for boards, commissions, and committees. Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.